Welcome to a special episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of story, our mission is to uplift, empower through the voices and stories, experiences, perspectives, using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is hope, helping other people every day. This subject for some people is going to be very uncomfortable. It's the truth, the lies, sex trafficking. We have a very special guest and a hero of this battle, Miss Lauri Burns. Miss Lauri Burns, she has a story that needs to be told. From 18 years of age, she was in the foster care system. She was left on the streets to fend for herself. Within a short period of time, she was addicted to heroin. And she started working the streets as a prostitute to survive. She had a child during that experience. She also had a brutal encounter with what some will call a pimp. I'll let her tell that part of the story. But she had an angel, someone that rescued her, gave her a second chance. And her being a brilliant mind with math, she got a chance to get an education, rebuild her life, and was lucky enough for someone to give her $1 million in order for her to do what she's doing today. I also have Christine Seymour. She is my co-host. She is my wing person, lifelong advocate for girls and women across the globe, an active board member with Flying with Air, a national organization committed to supporting survivors of sex trafficking. I am a thorn between two roses with a story that needs to be told. And Laurie, I want to thank you. And I can't say thank you enough for coming on, sharing your story, but also because you're a champion with action behind it. We've got 3 parts to it: your story, the team project, and you just came back from the Super Bowl. And we'll talk about that. So Laurie, welcome, Miss Burns.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
All right.
Great to see you. Thank you, Laurie, for coming and joining us.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited. Helping you guys, helping the world.
Well, we're trying to make a difference and educate people on a conversation that's very uncomfortable, a conversation that most people deny that even exists. I live in Pennsylvania, and I just realized through doing these episodes, this is the 5th episode, that I live in a community with one of the largest malls, that this is an active sex trafficking ring, and I did not know it. And a lot of people in my area are either unaware or turning a blind eye to it. I think through your story and through your activists that people, I hope, will change. So if you don't mind, if we can go back 18 to 23, if you don't mind sharing your story and how we came to be where we're at right now, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. So let's go a little bit before that. I was actually in the foster care system, but more group home because of my behaviors. And my behaviors were out of control due to what happened in my biological home and no therapy. So I actually started shooting up intravenous drugs when I was about 16, while I was still in the system. But at 18, I didn't realize at the time, I realized today after having 46 foster kids of my own, that the expected result for foster kids at 18 is to get thrown out on the street, and 60% of them are trafficking victims in America. But I had none of that knowledge. I just thought I was a witch in a past life, maybe had a lot of bad luck, and here I am on the street. And I had a daughter real quick, but it was a relative that actually pulled me into the trafficking world, that trafficked me kind of under the pretense of a job interview with good money. And I ended up on the streets, working the streets as a prostitute for several years. It was an encounter with gang members. I actually was abducted by a pimp. If you, my book is on Amazon, Punished for Purpose. So it goes through the abduction of the pimp and then also the gang members that almost killed me. And that was the night my life was saved. And that was January 5th, 1987. I've been sober now since January 6th of 1987. And by the time I guess I was about 23, almost 24 when my life got saved. So I had been on the streets since 18, that was a while. And by the age of 26, I took in my first foster kid.
Now, when you say you got saved, can you elaborate on how that actually happened, or was someone else involved, or did you save yourself?
There was several people involved. So I was left for dead in a canyon. I don't know where the canyon was. There was a passerby in a car, in a van, that found me in the brush, saw my body in his headlights, and took me to a hospital. That was the first savior. The second guy was a foster kid that the first night I ever worked for a call service, I was called to go to a house in a very nice area. And it was a man who was a Vietnam vet, who was a paraplegic after being shot in Vietnam, that I went to see. And he just didn't want to be alone on Christmas Eve. That man used to hunt me down on the streets to try and save me. So after the man that took me to the hospital saved my life, the next day I was back out on the street, and I called the man in the wheelchair and I said, can you help me? He not only saved me, took me to his house until I could get a safe shelter because I didn't have any money. He trained me in computers, which is how I became director at Northrop Grumman Corporation for 15 years and owned my own computer consulting firm. But
So-
you are, yeah, go ahead.
But make sure I got this right. So technically, a John saved you.
A John saved me. A John trained me. If you look up my story in People magazine, it literally says a trick trained her in computers, and now she works at Northrop Grumman, which wasn't great for work the next day, but you know, I'd already been there 15 years. So what can you say? They just said, we're very proud of you, but it's a
They should
very
be.
interesting story, huh?
They should be proud of you, Laurie.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are. And believe it or not, heroes come in all shapes and for whatever reason. I'm glad you
Yep.
had that.
Most of the
hero.
heroes I find come out of the ashes, right? That's what it takes to get us to put that energy towards changing the world, our own hurts and pains, and looking at everyone else that's coming out of the ashes or dying in them. It really takes that that pain that I went through myself to go, I'm gonna be the change I want to see in the world, so this doesn't continue to happen.
Quick question, because Christine and I shared a story with Christine, being addicted to heroin. I have a brother that is on the other side of that addiction and is an advocate for other people going into rehab. I always say that, you know, some people don't survive an addiction. He's thriving with his addiction, and he's sharing and educating and bringing other people out on the other side. How did you overcome the addiction? Because once it's in the system, our system have a tendency to crave. And then reading the fact that you were a math genius and went to trade school, how did you go from that life to this life?
But okay, so as far as the heroin addiction, we were just talking about this the other day with Slave to Nothing, which is, I don't know if you're aware, but In-N-Out Burger has a foundation called Slave to Nothing, and Lindsay's endeavor is to end human trafficking. And we were talking about now they're using a lot of medication assisted treatment to get people off of heroin, where you can take some other detox drug to slowly take you off. I never did that. I never did that because I knew if I didn't remember the precise amount of pain I was in, I'd probably end up back where I was. So I did hardcore kick heroin, and not only the last time, but several times. And the only way I could do it was by throwing myself in jail. And the good and bad news was I always had enough warrants to throw myself in jail when I needed to. So I would throw myself right in jail, and I would kick and I would get out. But the last time I stayed at that Trick's house, and then I went to a recovery home, and it was hard. I didn't sleep for a month. I was in pain all the time. I took a lot of baths to make the body aches go away, but one day at a time, I got through it. And you're asking me how I got from computer life to the charity life?
Right.
Well, what happened was people started asking if I could tell my story from beginning to end, and all over the world. So I went to Sweden, I went to England, I went to South Africa. And at some point I realized, God, I can't go everywhere. And when I end, the story ends. So people said you should write a book. So I did write a book, and it's called Punished for Purpose. So I wrote the book, and it was 2007. So I got sober in 1987. And in 2007, after that's about the time I was working on the book, I realized, oh my God, Laurie, there's so much more to this. Like at this point, I had taken in like 17 of the 46 foster kids I have. And I started realizing that all of the foster kids were going homeless. And I truly believed in my heart of hearts that I was born to do something bigger. So that's when I launched the charity, not really knowing what I was going to do with it, other than I was going to save some kids and I was going to give them the same opportunity that I had, which was get them off the streets, get them access to drug rehab, and get them in schooling. Now, when you talk about schooling from the trick that helped me, he helped me take apart computers and put them back together because he was in a wheelchair and my apartment was upstairs. So we'd get on the phone, the old school phone with the cord, and he talked me through like unscrew this, unscrew that, ground yourself so you don't get electrocuted. And I started getting really curious. And I got a grant through Job Training Partnership Act. And this is what my book tells, the whole horrific downfall of my childhood. And then the angels and teachers that were in my path when I got better. So this angel worked at the job, I think it was called Job Training Partnership Act way back when, but it's got a different name now. But it helps people that are less fortunate to go to school. And the program had been cut and there was no budget left. And this lady who didn't know me took my file and put it on top of the approved file list.
Wow.
Even though it wasn't approved and the budget had been cut. And she called me and she said, bad news, budget just got cut. I don't know this lady, I met her once. Good news, before my boss came back to pick up the pile, I put yours on top of the approved list. So I went through a 6-month trade school. And then after that, I was so fired up about computers and the opportunity to, here's a story, that a little part of the story that nobody will get except for a girl that was out there. You take a girl, I don't care what, she's selling her body, she's, destroying her mind and her soul, but she still realizes she's making over 100 an hour. And then you try and put her on minimum wage for $8 an hour actually working. That's a problem, right? So at this point, I'm actually making money because I'm a computer engineer, and I get really motivated that the more things I get trained in, the more money I could make. So I kept on taking tests, and I'd fail a lot of tests. I'd read books from the library or from the bookstore back in the day, and I'd take a test and I'd fail, pass, fail, pass. And I keep on doing that until at the end of my career with a GED education, I was making $320,000 a year.
Oh,
and
poor thing. You were
at the top of the ranks. Yeah, with a GED and no college education. My only trip to college was taking my daughter there. So yeah, the way that I found this life was the dream that I had. I started a little charity on LegalZoom because I heard on the radio you could do it for a couple $100. And it kills me when people have a dream and they don't ever start. For a couple $100, you could just start. And if people get in their mind, oh, I've got it, like it's a lot. No. How do you eat an elephant? Like one little bite at a time. So I ate the first bite. I started the charity. And then I started talking about the foster kids at the nail shop, the hair shop, everywhere. I got like $400 in donations. And I was so emotional about the whole thing that people were supporting me. And the next month I had 10 months later, I had $180,000 in my bank account. And I bought a little house. I put a down payment on the house. And this is why you have to read the book. This interview could go on forever because people that were following me said, this is a 3-bedroom house. You need a bigger house. And they knocked down the house and they built it up like people from the community as a 6-bedroom brand new house. And then someone said, you need to come to Venice. And someone gave me keys to a building. This stuff just, you can't even make it up, gave me the keys to a huge building right under the Venice sign and said, build it and they will come. And don't worry about rent. You can pay me later. And so I opened a drop-in center in Venice Beach. Then my guys at Northrop Grumman that work for me, really smart guy, Matthew Song, says I can create a hotels.com online so kids all over the country could get help. And then we started a texting program for kids. And then an actor and a millionaire contacted me at the same time and wanted a 100-bed facility for themselves. But they knew that I knew how to do websites and charities and everything that comes along with it because I was self-trained at this point. They'd seen what I did. They both donated to me. So I said I'd help them find their 100-bed place. The actor wanted like a warehouse and the the millionaire wanted like an old treatment center. Within 3 weeks, I found a treatment center connected to a warehouse owned by the same lady, both for lease. So I presented it to them. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. I'm doing another book on all the synchronicity and miracles that happen when you get on the path. So I rented the place. They said they could afford $20,000 to $25,000 a month for 20 years. And I rented a $20,000 a month place for 20 years, both the warehouse and the rehab. And for different reasons, they both crashed out. One got very sick and ended up in the hospital. The other one moved to another country. So my name was on the lease because I was helping them for 20 years at $20,000 a month. And I was paying for my daughter to go to Columbia. So there goes my money from work, and I don't have any money. That's when someone read my book on Amazon and called me and said, I'm going to wire you $500,000 tonight. I don't know you, but I know you just do something good with it. He wired $500,000. I told him we're going to open this 100-bed place for girls that are victims of human trafficking. He saw it. And then he said, I'll give you another $500,000 if you quit your job. So I said, well, really the $500,000 should go to kids, not to pay a salary for anybody, right? So then he said, okay, well, I'll give you $1,250,000 and you could pay me back the $250,000 in 30 years, but I need you to quit your job. So yeah, he pushed me and I quit my job. And it's just story after story. I got to tell you, in 2018, so at that point we had, we actually didn't open up with 100 beds. We put 74 beds in because we like our girls to have a lot of room and pretty rooms. So we opened up with 74 beds, and then we had 6 beds in Orange County. So we had 80 beds. That warehouse that I rented just sat there forever. I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't get rid of it. I had signed that darn lease. We got a grant proposal in the mail, called an RFP, a request for proposal. And in order to get the grant of $2 million a year, you needed to have a building that was leased for 20 years that isn't in use. I'm like, does somebody else have a building that's not in use that's rented for 20 years? I guess they think I'm the only idiot. So I applied for it and I got $2.5 million in capital to turn it into a hospital, and over $2 million a year to the tune of $50 million to turn that place into a hospital. So it's now a 16-bed hospital. And in 2018, one of my favorite homes in the world, Boys Town. I don't know if you ever saw the movie with Spencer Tracy.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful story. The Boys Town place by us is a multi-million-dollar site at the top of a canyon with views down to the ocean. Put it this way, it's 5 4,000 square foot homes with a pool in Paradise. The house next to it sold for 15 million. It's just one house. This is 5 houses and you own the whole street. Went up for bid and every charity in the county wanted it. And they called me and said, do you want to bid on it? I'm like, I'm just a little guy compared to these big places. And they convinced me that I should bid on it. And I have a donor who was an orphan. Funny story, when I was a kid, because I'm a math and I'm a techie person, I had Lionel train sets and I was obsessed with them. I had a Lionel train set room in my first house. Found the man that was one of the developers of the Lionel train sets, lives in China. He's an old man that was an orphan. He donated $1 million so I can get my beautiful site up here in the canyon, which I shared with you guys, and you can share it with the audience. And that is the only site for human trafficking victims in this county, and it's amazing. So children and adults and pregnant women. So you'll see there's rooms in there where the rooms are decorated with like animals and stuff, because that's the children of the pregnant women that come in. And we detox pregnant women. We're one of the only ones that do that because we want to see healthy babies come out. We don't like addicted babies. Not a good start. So about the time Boys Town closed, Children of the Night closed. You know, Children of the Night, they are the ones in LA that are saving children that are victims of sex trafficking. And they didn't close the organization, they closed all the beds at the same time as Boys Town. So it was like, we just lost, I don't know, a lot of beds in Orange County in LA. 2 weeks ago, I get an email from someone about a property in San Diego. I'm like, I'm not in San Diego. I'm in Orange County in LA. And I don't know, I think maybe Alexa was listening to me, or I don't know what happens, but I was talking about San Diego with a friend, but it wasn't me. And then the next thing you know, the same guy sends me a message and he said, well, we do have a building in LA. And I open up the email and it's Children of the Night. Wow. I'm like, this, you just can't make this stuff up. it got sold and it fell out and it was on the market again. And he sent it straight to me. And I sent a message to the realtors and I said, you know what? We have to restore it. I know you have a lot of people offering money for this place and bigger money than me, but this was for the children that are being trafficked. And you would do a great thing for the community and for yourself as far as good karma to restore it to the children it belongs to. So we are in escrow to buy Children of the Night as well. So right now we have 126 beds. When we finish Children of the Night, it'll be 150 beds. And we give the kids everything, not only what I got, which is free drug treatment, free detox, free school. When I talk about free school, I'm not talking about the kind they send foster kids to where it's community college for 4 years. I'm talking about FIDM, any school you want to go to. You want to go to computer school. We have 92 employees today, and we've raised $62 million, and we've saved thousands of kids. And still today, 70% of my staff are girls that came off the street that we trained to be counselors that are certified and trained, and they are our staff. You walk into our place, you'd think, yeah, these are just regular adults. No, start talking to them and find out their stories. They were kids that we saved that went to school and grew up and want to stay there and accept the new girls in. So little Lauries, you might say. And I tell them, when I retire or God forbid something happens to me, I'm going to haunt you guys. You don't keep this place running. There is no closing the doors around here.
Well, thank God for angels, and thank God for Lauri Burns. I know we've got a lot more to go through, but since you brought this up, how do people get in touch with you to learn more about this program, how they can support you? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, our website has contact@theteenproject.com, which comes to me still. So it's contact at the Teen Project. People hear that as like a team, but it's not a team. It's teenagers, the Teen Project. Because when we started it, we were talking a lot about teenagers and we didn't know what to name it. So someone said, let's just call it the Teen Project. That's what you always call it. So it still is that way. So you can go on the website, you can donate on the website, theteenproject.com or theteenproject.org. You can contact me directly. Our phone number's out there. You'll get to the hotline. And yes, so we've done more since then. Now, today, I've combined my technical knowledge with the knowledge of the kids on the street. So for the past, I said Matthew many years ago helped me create a hotels.com, but it was just, you would put in your location like New York City and it would just give you a list of all the shelters there. Well, over the years, I've started, I'm very into technology and I'm saying, why can't we create a real-time system like hotels.com where you really see the bed and you book the bed? And I talked to a lot of different agencies and the systems that were out there were very complicated. So I thought about it for a long time and finally got frustrated and said, hell with it, I'm creating it. So I made a draft or a visual board of what it should look like and how it should operate. And I hired someone to create it for me. And long story short, they created it for me. And then someone like your brother, a man who had 2 kids that were addicted and lost both of them, saw the site and said, I want this for rehabs so that people can book a rehab bed when they're on the street for free. So I started working on that. The guy that did it stole my code. So he didn't steal it to use it because Lord knows he doesn't have the people that, like, I have the contact to the victims and the people that are addicted, but he used it so that he could get more money out of me. And when he did that, I recognized that darkness as something I don't want to be anywhere near. So I said, I'll hire a lawyer. You do what you do. I'll do what I do. That was around the time Microsoft contacted me. They had heard about the app from someone on an airplane. Had talked to a pilot whose sister was trafficked. It was a very strange thing. And that's the new book. Like, how does this happen? So through strangers, I don't even know, they find out about the app, make a meeting with me. And part of my integrity is always honest. So they told me they love the app and they want to be part of it. And I told them, I'm sorry to tell you this, but the app was stolen. At which point they said, give us a day and we'll get back to you. And they came back and said, we're going to recreate the app for you. So Microsoft has partnered with me and we created SafeSite, which is just up now. And we're onboarding shelters all over the country. We call our mission, the time for talk is over. And I shared with you before, the reason why we call it that is because there are all these human trafficking places putting signs out and websites, and we help victims. And I can't tell you how many I call and they don't have one bed. And I say, what are you doing? And they say, awareness. We spread awareness. Well, I'm here to tell you, we're flipping aware, people. Okay. Maybe everyone's not aware, but I'm aware, and I'm glad you're aware, but the girls are still laying out there being killed. I have so many girls that have died. I've got a full table of pictures and stories of the girls that were trafficked and killed. And the time for talk is over. It's like, I need you to actually do something. I need you to actually save a girl. Even one. They say to save a life is to save the world.
Correct.
Even save one life. But so a couple days ago, I got a text from my new assistant, and it said, I see something about human trafficking right as I'm about to get on a plane. And it was this big thing, like a poster. And I said, don't get too excited. Call them and, like you're a victim, and see if you can get out of trafficking. A couple hours later, she texted back, you're right. There's no way out. They just gave me a bunch of phone numbers. That gave me a bunch of phone numbers. That gave me a bunch of phone numbers. And I finally just said, the team project helped me. I'm good. But we're not the only ones. I don't want to sound like we're the only ones, but there's probably 90% of them are doing awareness, and 10% are actually picking up the girls and getting them help.
And Laurie, that's the reason why when we spoke last week, I told you, and I had this conversation with Christine, is that there's a lot of conversation that leads to very little bit of action. And a lot of it is fear. And when I got a phone call from a mutual friend of ours, and I'll leave his name nameless, he says, you do know you're traveling in deep water right now. And I said, I'm aware of that. And when I listened to the Thorpe Project and his name, Ashton Kutcher, he's sitting up there, he's talking to the people on Capitol Hill, and I'm watching the body language, and he is speaking to people that are not actually listening. Now, I could be totally wrong, but I read body language very, very well. And I said that there's not enough action. And part of Christine and I's conversation is we need to connect the dots to all the resources so they create a web that something can happen. I mean, awareness, denial of the problem, especially when I look at statistics, it says 75% of the Black and brown young men from age 9 to 13, men are traveling outside of the country in order to have parties where they're sodomizing little boys, and we're doing nothing about it. When we look at the fact that the foster care system has failed the children that are in the system, and they're being released with no options for a life but the streets and drugs and so forth, and these gang members, pimps and whatever are taking advantage of them for profit, it needs to be stopped. And those people that have grown up in a system where they were abused and now they're become abusers, we need to have places where they can get help. The reason why you're sitting here today is because you don't take any bullshit off of anyone. You
right about that. I'm glad you could say bullshit on this thing. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. At such a level that I know the detail because I've been a foster kid. I've had 46 foster kids. And I have homes for foster kids that are like group homes, which I'll never do again. I just shut my group homes because what happened was I got in bed with social services and I learned that they're not only the same, they are worse. They are worse than they ever were. They tell me things like, let them run instead of protecting them. So I had to divorce them once again. I divorced them when I was 18. I re-divorced them recently. But there are a couple of things that people don't know about foster kids. Number one, never an Amber Alert. I learned that when one of the kids I was mentoring went missing. She was 12. She was on the spectrum. She wasn't even capable of self-grooming. And they switched her from Boys Town, which was beautiful. That was before I had it. And a wonderful family to a male and female couple with no kids. And she was scared to death. And she went to school one day and never returned home. I was going to be on the radio that night. And I said, let me talk about Shauna tonight to her social worker. And she said, oh, no, we don't talk about foster kids missing. That's when it hit me. Oh my God, I've never heard of an Amber Alert for a foster kid. They're just casualties. They go missing. Nobody knows. Not only do they not have an Amber Alert and people don't know they're missing, they don't really find them unless they get arrested again or something, or they end up in the hospital or dead, right? Because there's nobody looking for them.
That's the same conversation we have in my community of children of color. that
Right.
there's no Amber Alert, there's no search for them or whatever the case may be. It's just, it's got to be drugs or criminal gang activity or whatever. The conversation's got to change, and you're the leader of that change.
Right. And I've been in a situation where I took social services to court at one point, and I ended up at the top level, and I realized when you're fighting social services, there is no external auditor. Their lawyers are employees of social services. That's who's going to decide. So I'm like, this is a conflict of interest at the highest level. Yes. And there is no external, like we have external auditors coming in all the time from Department of Healthcare Services, Joint Commission. There's always external auditors auditing us to keep us on our game, which I appreciate. There is no external audit for social services. Not only that, they will never tell you how many kids are missing. They'll tell you they don't know, but I got to tell you, this is why God has put me on this path, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, or George Burns, who I used to pray to. I don't care what you want to call it or him, but I'm on the path, right? So we make, at a foster home, I have to make a serious incident report every time a kid walks out. At a group home, you have to do an unusual incident report. All of these reports go to social services. And I recently saw that Arizona, a councilwoman named Jennifer, I can't remember her last name, in Arizona, pushed forward a law that they have to start telling us how many kids are missing. There are millions of kids missing. And it's not like millions this year. It's adding every year. So 12-year-olds ran away, and 13-year-olds ran away, and 14, and they never show back up again. So it's just a building number. And while I appreciate, Kevin, that you appreciate that I'm picking the kids up, I also realize I'm just treating the wounded. I'm not ending the war. This war is never going to be over if we don't address it at a higher level and turn off the drip, right? So if the foster kids keep on going homeless, I'm just going to pass away, and my kids, the girls that run my place, will take it over, and it'll always be a problem. What we need to do is change the laws. And over the past couple of months, I've met with more politicians than I ever wanted to meet with, and they're gung-ho at the meeting, and then they turn into Ashton Kutcher's audience. They fade out, they gaslight me, they disappear. It's too much. And the AB 12 money that the kids are supposed to get after foster care, they don't get. That some of them get it, this many. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Laurie, is that the weakest link?
Is what?
Advocacy is the weakest link in our judiciary, in our enforcement. What is our
Yes.
weakest link?
The weakest link is, number one, they never finish with foster kids. They let them out at 18. Could you imagine letting your kid out of the house at 18? Oh my God. No money, no car, no parents, no savings account, no cell phone even. They don't even have cell phones when they leave foster care, most of them. So leave them out like that for dead. And whatever happens, happens. A pimp is actually the best solution for a kid on the street. At least I can make some money and get back into a warm place and get some food in my belly, because out here I'm going to die and be raped and maybe killed, right? So that's actually the only solution they have many times. So you've got the law that doesn't bring them, the foster care should bring them through college or get them a vocational trade after graduating high school, so they can actually have a career at that point, at the very minimum. Then they put forward some laws to extend foster care to 21 in many states in the United States. But the requirements to get your check are so high. Sorry, that's my dog. Jake. The requirements are so high that the kids can't get their check. And not only can they not get their check, they're not allowed to call the social worker anymore, and they have a hard time getting a hold of anyone. So they never get their check. So if we did an audit on how many kids actually got the support they're saying they have till 21, it would not be a good report. So we have to change the laws. We have to turn on the Amber Alerts. We have to increase prosecution for tricks more than pimps, because there'll always be a backup pimp to take over. But if we start putting the tricks pictures on like Megan's Law website, that could kill the supply and demand really quickly, because most tricks are married men that don't want their wife to know they're out there searching prostitutes, right? And we've got to change the Amber Alerts. We've got to change the AB 12 and at least make an emergency fund, which did happen about 2 weeks ago. I really don't know the specifics of it yet, and it's not nationwide. It was a small thing, I think, changed in California. Needs to happen everywhere. So it's all legislation now, Kevin, Kristen. It's all legislation.
Well, it's funny. How I started this platform was to educate people and to bring awareness to my community, the Black community, and supply resources to our people to provide opportunity. This is the same platform that sex trafficking needs to be on, because once it gets to the White House, it's just smoke and mirrors. It's whoever's paying the big bucks and whatever. And I don't care who's in the office, what party and whatever. It's like you're answering to a power that has a deposit into your bank account, not the people. When I talk about politics, if you look at the word politics, it's for the people. Your local politicians, on the very surface level, this is how policies get changed. Everyone that's listening to this podcast, turn around and look at your neighbor's child, your child, the children when you drop off at school. They are all products of a production company that doesn't want the attention, and we need to give that our full attention and to pass laws and put systems in place that these systems do not allow to thrive, because we're allowing them to thrive because we don't want to admit it, no matter if it's based on your color of your skin or based on the sexuality or based on the system that is failing our children. And we have to admit the system itself, from the lowest level to the highest level, is failing these children, because these children, because they don't come from affluent families, are being disposed. But we don't realize, and people are not taking into consideration affluent families. Your children are subject to this conversation as well, strictly because they have access to the phones. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I was on Good Day LA a couple of weeks ago, and you might have seen it. And I had the story of Simone, who's one of our girls that we saved. And then she was she was saved from trafficking, and now she's our counselor in charge of human trafficking. It was also that week that the little girl died on the freeway, and she was 16, and then they found out she was a victim. Do you remember her name? I should know it.
I don't remember her name. I remember the story.
Okay. So yes, people, and the reason I was talking about it on Good Day LA is we are, we're a charity. So we have a board of directors. One of my board of directors was a woman who does makeup for the movie stars. She has an affluent family. While she's serving on our board, she contacts me one day and says, I need you to come to my house. This is when I'm working at Northrop. I go over there. She said, I think my daughter's getting trafficked. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said she was on the computer looking for a job. And next thing I know, there's really nice cars pulling up in front of the house, and she's got a lot of money and she won't talk to me. So I put a keylogger on her computer. Remember that, parents, keylogger. Anyone who's not keylogging their child right now, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more so you get it. If your kid disappears, you cannot roll back the tape because you have no tape. And people say to me, oh, I don't want my kid to think I don't trust them. Oh, it's not your kid that you don't trust. It's a form of protection. I tell my foster kids that live here, look, I'm going to put a keylogger on. I don't care if you cuss, talk about sex, with friends. Like, I'm not going to monitor you like Big Brother, but if you go missing, I'm going to find you, right? So, or if you start giving out our address to someone, I don't care if it looks like a little boy in the picture, you don't know who's behind the picture. So what's happening right now, 59% of kids were trafficked off Facebook in 2020. 70% of kids have access to Instagram right now. And they also have TikTok, and you see them, they're using filters, they're dressing sexy, they're twerking. Yeah. People are watching this from the human trafficking world. Predators are watching this. And if you don't think so, you better do some digging, because I talked to the chief in charge of LA probation. She said last year, 90% of the kids that they rescued from trafficking were normal kids from normal families, whether they come from a bad neighborhood, no matter what color they are, what neighborhood they come from. If they look cute online, somebody's going to be watching them. So I say put keylogger on anything, everything, if you're not going to stop your kid from posting sexy pictures of themselves online, because they're prey. They're prey right now. They are right out there at the fingertips of the trafficker who's on the other end of the computer. And you think, oh, okay, well, her location's off. Oh, okay. So this is where tech crosses the lines of my charity world. The location doesn't need to be on. You get one license plate in there, one building that's familiar that we're now going to do an image search on, one picture at school where you know where the school is because you did an image search on that. You don't need the location on. It's real easy to know where your kid is.
I'm going to give you someone's Instagram page, because she just transferred from the East Coast to Florida, and all of her posts now are from being on yachts and high-end places and so forth. I know her family doesn't have the wherewithal in order for her to have that lifestyle. And this conversation is bringing about concern.
Mhm.
So
That would be great.
I'll
Any
share
chance
that.
I get to save a life. And we're quick.
Yeah,
Call us, you want to come in today, you get in today, huh?
tell us about more about the team project. And I know I skimmed over a part that you had your daughter. Your daughter's now back in your life. You want to tell us about what's going on with between mommy and daughter, and how, if she's actively in the team project or?
No, my daughter, she was 4 when I got sober. So she remembers a couple of things from before 4, unfortunately. But she grew up with a lot of foster kids in her home. She had 17 brothers and sisters when she wrote her personal story to Columbia, applying to be a social worker. And she did get accepted because of her personal story. She went to Columbia and she got dual masters in social work and special ed, but then she went off to be a learning specialist. And she worked with kids that had autism for a while and nonverbal kids. And then she worked at a private school on the Upper East Side of New York, but now she has her own kids. So she's back being a mom again, and she's a fantastic mom. I take no credit for that. It's all the people that supported me, that were around me when I was young, and their influence on her life, and my therapist. So when I got off the streets as a prostitute, I was assigned the therapist that would save my life, and eventually my daughter's life, and help her with therapy, and all of my kids. And they all went to the same therapist that I share about in my book. And I share all my therapy sessions. And you say, like, I know I got off the heroin, kicking it, and then I got clean. But the reason people don't stay clean a lot is they have trauma they're not willing to look at, because it's too hard to go through that traumatic event again. But that's the only way out. So 17 years of hardcore therapy, and then check-ins every time I felt like I was losing it for whatever reason. And I still go to therapy, because it's like peeling an onion. There's always another layer exposed.
Yes, and peeling back that onion, you just came back from the Super Bowl, and before we wrapped it up, I know you were armed and dangerous. You were with a group of other people armed and dangerous.
I wasn't, but they were. God, if I had a gun, they'd probably take it away from me and shoot me with it, because I'm not good with a gun. But we did have Navy SEALs, and I think they're called Renegade Marines, Recon. They're the Special Forces. So we had Special Forces with us, and they were on the streets with us, walking with Sloan Bella and I. Sloan Bella is a psychic that used to work with children of the night to find street kids. She was a street kid. And some of our prior victims that are now survivors were on the street with us. And what we found, number one, is we couldn't rescue them right there on the street, because the pimps were watching them and the pimps were armed. And as much as we have guns on our team, I don't want to be in the middle of a shootout right now, because that stops me from saving lives if I get killed. So we gave out devices that have a QR code on it. And I'm not going to say what the devices are, I don't think, because then they'll be out there, right?
Right.
Secret devices with secret QR codes on them. And what we did find was that, I don't know, did I send my poster to you? If not, I'll send my poster to you. That all of the hotels see right under their eyes girls being trafficked right in front of them, and do nothing about it because they don't know what to do. So we hung a poster in all the women's bathrooms downstairs in the lobby in the hotels with the QR code hidden in the poster, so that the girls can get help. And the story that is, I'm all about stories. Sorry, my camera's falling again. You annoying little thing. The story that really got me motivated on this whole thing was, there was a hotel that we walked into, and the young girl that worked there said, oh my God, 3 weeks ago, a girl came in and she was crying, and there was an older man with her, and she was hysterical, and it looked like she was on a lot of drugs. So we figured she was a drug addict. So we sent her to the room with the guy. 3 days later, I saw online her mom's looking for her. She's missing. So that right there was someone drugging and trafficking a girl and shipping her somewhere. And they let her in because they didn't know what was going on. She just looked like a hysterical drug addict that was really high to them. And she was a juvenile. So she was trafficked right under their eyes. So they have the poster as well. But that story was just what I needed to hear to light a fire under my butt. That says we're going to partner. Now we partner with Allied Universal. That's one of our biggest donors. Allied Universal CEO Steve Jones and his family donate over $1 million a year, and they have security in many corporations throughout the country. They are the biggest security firm in the world right now because they've acquired many others, and they are all about put the poster up, get the girls off the street quickly, let's save some lives.
And are you guys putting into place systems to educate hotel staff and hotel owners?
Well, I am actually working with Steve Jones to educate his staff, which is the security firms that are placed at many of the hotels. And then I'm going to utilize partners like Microsoft or Allied Universal to go out to the hotels. Because Lauri Burns, I don't know, I'm just, I'm kind of like Joan of Arc, I don't know if they're gonna like invite me into the Hyatt, but I know they'll invite Steve Jones or Microsoft in. So at that point, we'll be in and we'll start hanging them up on the walls.
All right. I always ask this of all my guests, and you are a powerhouse. You're an angel. I will say that. And you're a warrior.
Angels.
And you have angels. From listening to your story, I know the only way that things are going to change if we get the private sector actively involved, especially those of us that have deep pockets and those that have influence on our local politicians to get them to stop turning a blind eye and change the system itself. If you had one ask, ASK, and you knew no one could turn you down, what would that ask be?
Someone that writes legislation. My God, I needed a book published. I learned how to be a publisher. I needed a book written. I learned how to be an author. I needed an app. I learned how to produce, a team that would develop an app. But I don't want to do legislation. It's like the one thing that I could maybe learn to do it, but I think it'd be quicker if someone knew someone who writes legislation to say, I want to join Laurie and I want to write this bill. As much as we need and could always use money, I want to end the war on the children.
And Laurie, believe it or not, I've been doing my podcast since August 2021. I've asked this question of every single guest. I've had 3 people to this date from the private sector that have answered 3 of my guests' dream. I think you're going to be the 4th, that someone's going to step forward. I always say to people that follow and watch this podcast and RMK Productions are people with a higher call to action. The reason why you're here is because you're of action. My mother started a company in the civil rights movement called Action Incorporated. So this is part of my calling. I teamed up with Kristen because she has a higher calling for action, and both Flying with Air have action. We're pulling all these resources together. I doubt very seriously if this conversation is going to be ignored. But I will say to you, you now have an open platform to come in anytime to educate us, to share your book, to share stories, to be part of this platform in order for us to get this thing to change, to get legislation to change, to improve on the foster care system, and to make it aware for all the parents that are living in suburbs that their children are at risk as the kids that are in our low income areas, and to take this trade off the market altogether. Right.
And you know what, Kevin? I'm going to go right to the beginning of our conversation. The reason I saved lives is because my life was taken. And I think it's going to take some of those really wealthy parents to lose their kids to trafficking to realize, oh, maybe I should do something about it.
I had the same conversation with someone on a TV show that interviewed me the other day, and they said they were actively involved and they said they couldn't take it, so they turned a blind eye. And I said, when are your eyes going to be open? When your niece, nephew, or your daughter or son is taken? Is that when you're going to start paying attention?
Unfortunately, yes. That's the human nature, right? So you get a movie star that gets AIDS and all of a sudden we have a lot of money to cure AIDS.
Yeah.
You get a movie star that has some other, illness or catastrophe, and then we get a lot of money for that. So I guess we're going to have to wait for,
the right person.
Big money to come after the kids with the big money are taken.
Yeah, well, COVID taught a lot, taught us a lot of things. They taught, our employers are not the best employers. We learned how to child care because take care of your own freaking kids.
Yeah.
But we also have a different calling to do more in life. And I'm hoping that this interview and the many interviews that we do before and after this, that people start to open their eyes and open their hearts and care enough to do something, if nothing else, care enough to pay attention and not assume that every child that trips over her feet is a derelict in our society.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. If people have to educate on this, I'm hoping the next time I come back is to say we got the legislation, the law's being passed. I'm hoping that someone watches this and says, I can do it and I will do it. Because like I said, when you're on the path, miracles continue to happen and the karma on your life is gold.
Well, Laurie, you know something, you have
Terrific,
angels with
Laurie.
you.
Thank you.
You have angels with you. Again,
I do have angels with me for sure. They lead me to the people that help me, literally.
Again, how do people reach you?
Contact at theteamproject.com is good. Go out to the website or call the 800 number on the website. And when the operator answers, we have a 24-hour service. Say, I need you to call Laurie specifically. Don't give me just to the staff. I need you to call Laurie. They've got me on the list. They'll just dial my cell phone.
All right. So we've covered a lot of information here, and hopefully we've opened the eyes to many people that eyes were closed. We're hoping that this conversation doesn't end with the ending of this podcast. And I'm hoping that when you look outside your window, your view has changed on humanity. If you like to share this, I would ask you to do this. Go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you want more information on how to contact myself or Laurie, go to info@rmk.net. And my grandfather always said, education is not designed to make you comfortable. It's designed to make you think. And I hope that the Lauri Burns story makes you do more than just think, take action.
Yeah.
And this is Kevin.
Take a bite of the elephant. Just a little bite.
Just a little
Take
bite.
a little bite every day. Before you know it, that guy will be gone.
All right. And I'll fade to black. And thank you, Lauri Burns, for
Thank
being the
you
hero.
so much, Laurie and Kevin.